Hello, everybody. Welcome to another case study. Today, we will be reviewing the drill that I ran on Friday, March 15th, 2024. And if you guys don't understand what I mean by running a drill, well, in this tweet that I made about a month ago, I state that there were three forms of iterating a strategy. What do I mean by iterating? I just mean do, right? So when you hear the term reiterate, that just means that you're redoing. So there are only three ways to apply my strategy. It is through backtesting, which means that I'm looking at previous data and I have no risk in play. I'm looking at running drills, which is using current data but no risk. And there's stress testing, which means that I'm using current data and I am using real risk. So in this scenario, I'm actually running a drill, mainly because I don't trade Fridays. I primarily trade Tuesday through Thursday. So Fridays, I kind of like to just run drills, see what types of opportunities make sense and why they did play out or why they did not. And as you can see here, this was the drill that I ran today that I posted on my Twitter, where it was pretty much a sell continuation for GU based on the previous price action. So how I found this execution, which as you can see, it's still kind of going, which makes a lot of sense as to why it's still going. I am always referencing the three-step framework that I mentioned in the previous video, where I'm looking at direction, I'm looking at liquidity, and I'm looking at the execution, right? I always have direction before liquidity, because if I can have a liquidity sweep that favors my external bias, and I can find an execution or a trading model to get into that trade, then I have a quote-unquote high probability scenario, right? And that's why I kind of prioritize the direction over the liquidity, right? But that's just how I see it, right? So when I'm looking at GU, right, I know that there was a news event yesterday and they caused a very big bearish move into the downside, right? That very big bearish move occurred yesterday, like I said, right? And it seems like we have kind of paused a bit. It seems like we took out an internal low and it looks like we're starting to build some type of bullish price action. But I always want to emphasize the external direction, which in this case is bearish. So I'm looking for a reason to justify whether or not, or to justify a bearish continuation scenario, right? So how did I develop this idea? Well, first things first, I do note that when we started to kind of pull back, we swept previous high 1, previous high 2, equal highs present here. We swept both of those highs, right? And we did not create a substantial new high. What do I mean by substantial new high? That means that we would have broken up, well beyond the previous high. Whenever it's just a sweep, then I kind of don't consider it a full break of structure. I consider it a potential liquidity grab that has not occurred yet, right? But although it may be a liquidity grab, we have to also acknowledge that this is still internally bullish, right? This is still some type of bullish break of structure. So I need the justification, right, to justify a bearish scenario, which is not present as of yet right here. So we do have a bullish scenario into the upside, and we already had a previous structural disruption because we were technically high into low retracement. This retracement high is solidified based on that break, and then after that is solidified, we come into the high and we break that. So we are still technically within a bullish range, right? So once I'm looking at this, I anticipated the sweep occurred, and we came into a potential continuation bullish POI from a scalp POV, right? And that gave us a reaction into a 15-minute supply zone, which is present here based on the inefficiency fill and the high being the invalidation, right? But I will not take this scenario here. The reason why I don't want to take this scenario here is because, like I said, internally, we are still bullish based on the structural disruption in play. So I look at the reaction after we swept the high that led into a bearish order flow disruption based on the bullish POI being taken or being reacted from, did not break the external high, and then the full POI is broken through. That is a sign of disruption. But we also must anticipate, right, that this is just a CBOS, right? This just solidifies the high as the pullback high. Excuse me. Based on this low into the high that is solidified based on the CBOS present here. So, right, when I'm looking at this, there's two things that can happen. One, I'm going to be given a sign of reversal, or two, I'm going to be given an internal potential liquidity grab towards the downside. So as you can see, I'm going to note this POI. A lot of people will see that we have a low into a high, into a retracement, there's an internal break, and they want to take the M5 candle into the upside, that being here. But for me, this is not a reference point for me to want to buy. It's more so a reference point for me to either confirm that we are going to be bullish, because if this POI was to have reacted from, broken a high, then I'm looking for the continuation to the upside and then potentially aim for a previous structure point or a potential POI to the downside, etc., etc., etc. But I don't like to do that because, like I said, I want to favor the continuations to the downside because those targets are already printed for me. So this, like I said, this POI would have been my reason to potentially give up on the bearish scenario, but it's not my inclination to buy because, like I said, this is still technically overall bearish based on the external direction. So once I saw this POI be completely taken out internally, you can see that there is some type of solidified low here. So once we have this low being broken, then from a scalp POV, we do have unwillingness based on the previous high. So once we have unwillingness based on the previous high, that is an unwillingness to continue higher. So I am going to justify my trade scenario, right, based on a bullish candle into the upside that led to an engulfing bearish candle. That bearish candle, I'm only looking to come into the inefficiency, have my SL at the high, and give me the result that I want. And that is exactly how this played out, right? So although it wasn't the best trade in terms of cleanest price action, I was given the result that I wanted using the information that was given to me, which means that I had my previous direction, which was bearish. We had the liquidity being swept, which is one high, two highs. And then my execution was based on the order flow disruption and the break of that M5 POI that we talked about. So I'm always trying to follow that three-step framework to achieve a favorable result, because that to me is what's given me pretty much almost all of my trades. If you go through all of my trades on my Twitter, most of them follow this framework where I'm looking for direction, I'm looking for liquidity to be taken, and I'm looking for a execution model to come into play so that I can justify the bearish continuation or the bullish continuation, right? So with that being said, I will see you guys in the next one.